Remember the Iliad? Remember the War of Troy? They have to do with the foundation, with the origins of Rome. Rome is known as the highest civilization of the ancient world, the most expansive, the most durable, the one that has left many of its institutions even until today. Of course, the language, Latin, is the matrix of the Romance languages spoken throughout the world. Many, many, many contributions from the Roman civilization still exist. We enjoy them in our daily lives, probably without noticing. But how did this civilization come to be? Who were the Romans? Where did they come from? Well, we have to go back to the Iliad. I mentioned before, Aeneas, one of the princes of Troy, escapes from the destruction. He was carrying his children and his father, Anchises. 3 centuries later, after he landed in the Italic peninsula, 2 of his descendants, Romulus and Remus, were fed by a she-wolf. And these 2 brothers were the founders of the original Rome sometime in the 8th century. Some historians say 1757, 1785. There is some dispute about there, but the origins of the city of Rome are in the 8th century, as I mentioned, almost 200-300 years after the arrival of Aeneas to the Italic peninsula. The myth is then that these 2 brothers were fed by a she-wolf, therefore their strength, their bravery. Rome was also characterized for imitating many of the Greek contributions. Architecture, some of its political features, war techniques. Greece was the inspiration for Romans. We can see that, for example, in the way in which Romans developed their architecture with different kinds of capital, the Tuscan, the Doric, the Ionic, the Corinthian, the Composite. These are details that have to do with the Greek architecture, among many other achievements. However, Rome was different in many ways. Here we have an image of Emperor Octavianus Augustus, the great leader, the pacifier of a country that was sunk in civil wars, in blood. He imposed an imperial model that was acclaimed by some, despised by others. One of his main critics was Cicero, who was also a philosopher, a politician, a statesman. We want to talk about this. This is the moment of the splendor. The Romans also paid tribute to many of their gods. Here's the temple of the Pantheon, where the gods inhabit, still today in Rome. And many other constructions that have survived, the Forum Romano, something like the Congress, the place where the senators met to debate, still in the center of contemporary Rome. Rome achieved its expansion, a huge occupation of nearby territories, obviously by force. They had the most powerful army of the ancient world after Alexander in Greece. We can see the dimension of the Roman Empire here in its highest peak, year 117 AD, under the command of Emperor Trajan, or Trajanus in Latin. From southern England, all the Iberian Peninsula, all northern Africa, the Middle East, what is now Turkey, Egypt, those were Roman possessions that received their language, their customs, their institutions. They were, of course, resisted by many of the natives, but after centuries, the Roman Empire lasted for several centuries, at least the Western Roman Empire until the year 457, when it was invaded by the Goths and the barbarians of Northern Europe. Rome was the center of civilization, was the center of the world, was the center of knowledge, of prestige for many, many people in the ancient world. They celebrated their victories with arches. Here's an arch of triumph, typical of the celebration when a general arrived victorious from a campaign in France, in Spain, or other parts. The people of Rome erected these arches of triumph to memorialize, to make their memory perdurable. In its peak, Rome also had the Colosseum, this circus that was the scenario, as we have seen in many films like Gladiator or Ben-Hur and many others, was the center of entertainment. The policies of the emperors was to give people bread and circus, food and entertainment. That would keep the country calm, that would keep people happy. And it worked, for in this place, races of chariots, fights by gladiators and others took place. Another important emperor, the first one, Julius Caesar, who was killed, as we know, then Octavianus Augustus, and his successors, Nero, Tiberius, Trajan, etc. The greatest was Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher of the 2nd century AD.